Welcome to Signals and Stories, 10 Years with the Vertex Project, a limited series exploring how cyber threat intelligence has evolved over the past decade. In each episode, we break down how analysts actually investigate, covering the data and the decisions that shape real-world intelligence. Stay tuned. Welcome to our limited series. If this is the first episode you're turning into, we've been talking about changes in cyber threat intelligence in the last decade. I'm Kali Fencl, and here today I am sitting down with Visi Stark, co-founder of the Vertex Project, and our esteemed guest, Tom Hegel, distinguished threat researcher and research lead at SentinelOne. Tom is a leader in tracking nation state and criminal actors globally and works at the intersection of real-world intrusions and intelligence analysis. Today, we'll be talking about the evolution of adversaries in the past decade and security companies as targets, focusing on DPRK IT workers. That's kind of hard to say, posing as job applicants. So welcome, Visi and Tom. It's so great to have you both on the show today. I know, Visi, you've introduced yourself on the first episode, but if people are tuning in, if they're doing this out of order, which I hope they're not.
Yeah, go back and read, go back and listen to my other bio. I don't have time to do this again.
Yeah, we're here and Tom's here, so we got to hear about Tom.
No, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be on this podcast. Huge fanboys, obviously, to the company and the team and everything you guys do. So it's an honor to be here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tom. So you've actually been in cybersecurity your entire career, right? Or did I not stalk you well enough on LinkedIn?
So good stalking. There's not LinkedIn. There's stuff not on LinkedIn, thankfully. But no, not many know this, but I actually started in grade school doing more on like the hardware side. So my career kind of started in the fumes of like a soldering room and cleaning dust out of PCs for just like mom and pop shops and stuff like that. And so yeah, really kind of, when I think back to my career, it really kind of started in like the physical side, and then everything has kind of looked back at that with like today's like purview into like what's going on in the world. So, but yeah, then I kind of shifted into security after that point. But yeah, that's how I got started. It's been quite a while though.
Why'd you want to make the shift?
Well, I think like, once I started getting exposure to security, this was...
Because it's cool, right?
Exactly. No, I mean, like doing hardware, that like IT, shifting into like the IT management side, it's very static. Things don't move as fast as security does. So naturally you look at security and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's all this stuff happening. There's these new threat actors, there's these new hacks, it's actually like important in many things. Back in the day, that was before like cyber was involved in like every war, it was publicly, but the excitement around that was just like, it's hard to ignore it. And it just kind of drew me in, from like securing things to hacking things, then to like knowing about the actors and like why and who. And that's just the egg that you could crack open on all of that is just like, it's just so exciting and fun to be a part of.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's basically an infinite pool of interesting things to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there's
Plus,
so many
it's
like,
sexy.
niche groups. Yeah, there's so many niche things to focus on. If it's like the hardware hacking, or like the threat intelligence that's like more so focused on the APTs versus the crime, the malware reversing. There's just so many things that you can spend a lifetime trying to like learn it all and never finish. And that just is so exciting compared to like managing IT, Active Directory. Same thing, makes you want to go crazy after a while.
If you can learn the entire thing about it, if you can learn the entire discipline in 10 years, it's not a good enough discipline, right?
Exactly.
Like, it's not an interesting discipline.
Yeah. It needs something that keeps us exciting going for our entire careers and new challenges and so forth. And obviously the industry itself has matured alongside all of this, so that just adds even more excitement to it too.
Yeah, and that's why we wanted to, talk to you specifically today, is because, we are looking at the past decade. Like, what would you say are the biggest changes you've noticed, or, just like anything that you think, people might be interested in terms of, what you've seen in the past decade and where things are going?
Such a huge question.
I know.
I know. Like thinking to that, I'm like, first of all, I'm like, so much has changed, and I'm just like, limiting it to just a decade is actually kind of challenging, because a decade has gone by like a blink of an eye.
It really has.
But, No,
The
I
APT one report is outside of the scope of a
Yeah,
decade.
exactly, exactly. That's like a couple decades ago at this rate. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so, like, I think the the amount of, actors that have kind of become a lot more professional has been noteworthy. Thinking
Yeah,
back to when, like, publicly known CTI has become a thing, like, the APT-1 report really kind of, like, opening that can of worms for us all. I think since then, we have seen so many actors evolve to maturing their own offensive programs. So it makes threat intelligence have to mature alongside that. And
yeah,
overall, things have just like exploded when you look at the number of actor names, the number of custom toolkits, the number of techniques that have just shifted to make it more difficult for defenders and researchers to like track actors. So I think like the professionalization of it all has become kind of one of the more things that it's more noteworthy things that stick out over the last decade itself.
for sure.
We're going to talk about North Korea, obviously, but they're like in my opinion, like one of like the go-to examples of like professionalization of an offensive organization. So
Yeah. And
creative. So
they're also blurring a lot of lines that have been
yeah,
traditionally set in stone, right? Like it all started with some of the cybercrime actors getting a little bit more professionalized, and then some of
yeah,
the APT threat groups being like, well, we could do that a little bit more like them and piecemeal
yeah,
it out and make services or, interdependencies and stuff like that. So
yeah.
like the modern ecosystems evolution has been like very intertwined, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and it's just getting messier every day now that you're involving, like, the political aspect too, like, hacktivism and being aligned between crime and APT. It's just
Or supposed hacktivism too,
exactly
right?
the
And
fake
like just
ones,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're all taking notes and cribbing pages from each other's playbooks and stuff too.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Like the no-name hacktivists out of, Russia, it's like, yeah, they're using, like, Western volunteers, they're pretending to be hacktivists, but they're actually state sponsored from the Kremlin, and it's
right,
just, oh my god, it's like a spider web of attribution mess, and I just love that so much.
makes analysis all the more challenging, right? Like
Yeah.
gone are the days of the well-defined group that you can put in a box and set aside, right?
Yeah, yeah, being able to be like, "This C2 is them, done." It's like, good luck, you know?
Oh,
Unfortunately, that the industry hasn't followed that super well yet because a lot of people still follow those old ways of doing things.
yeah,
And I think obviously that's like where Synapse really shines, but in fixing a lot of that for us. But the industry is almost always struggling to keep up with this professionalization of actors as well. Um, you look at like Greg, our friend Greg at Proofpoint, talking about like we need to just stop saying this APT name. Like things have disintegrated so much that like this AP doesn't exist anymore. It's now like these 15 different bubbles. We need to
right.
like really take that to heart.
Oh, so we wanted to specifically, Tom, talk about your research piece, top tier target, what it takes to defend a cybersecurity company from today's adversaries. One of the most interesting findings was DPRK IT workers posing as job applicants. So what does that tell us about how the threat landscape is evolving?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the IT worker scheme and just North Korea overall, like we mentioned, is just so creative in how they do things.
Mhm.
And that research came out almost a year ago at this point, and even since then, things have evolved so much with this set of activity.
Yeah,
But when I look at them and I see actors that are incentivized to be extremely creative, and it's paying off extremely well for them. Everything from the success of the IT workers campaign of like being able to get into organizations at scale, even lined up against the crypto theft side of the house through like contagious interview and so forth, going after developers. They're so creative and reactive to new ways of doing things as like an offensive operator that they are very difficult to keep up with and kind of get your head wrapped around. But IT workers in particular, our research really focused more so on how they've come to attack and try and get in through organizations through like the hiring process. And that included our organization. As a cybersecurity organization whose like main goal in life is to defend against these guys, they're just openly trying to get in. It goes to show you how widespread this activity is because if they're coming after us, they're going
totally.
after basically everyone out there.
Yeah,
But yeah, they've evolve so quickly on trying to interject themselves into the hiring process to become fake employees that they would apply at scale completely automated processes where they'd create fake personas or steal real personas. And it makes it very messy because an IOC in this sense is like pretty much meaningless. Like, good luck trying to flag every resume out there. It's almost like impossible just because the whole process is completely automated, where every applicant is almost treated like a file hash, where it's like, yeah, that hash is unique to that one case. You
Yep.
don't go bother trying to blacklist it, saying like this is the extent of their operations.
And then the scope of defense is growing wider then too, right? So like you've got in a lot of instances even what few artifacts there
Mhm.
are now being gathered or being pulled in via systems that aren't traditionally CTI or aren't traditionally like infosec infrastructure, right? Like you've got the like posts actual like HTTP log info and stuff like that is actually some of the most critical
Mhm.
egress data and things like that are basically like housed in other systems that aren't typically a part of your analytical process, right? So the
Yeah.
need to like diversify your own internal data sources and your own perspective becomes like paramount.
Yeah, that was one of the big eye openers for us in this research. It really was apparent how there's so much underutilized data out there that threat intelligence teams, which really questions what threat intelligence is compared to intelligence overall for the whole company. Um, um,
That's my drum.
yeah, right. It's crazy though, because it's a great example with recruiting. So like in our scenario, we have giant talent acquisition platforms. SentinelOne's a large company, so we're talking like hundreds of thousands of applications, a database of applications to get jobs here. And we're not that big of a company. You look at like a Fortune 5 company, it's like good luck, like
Yeah.
totally X times the number. But yeah, so getting that data of the applicants was key because accessing that data allowed us to understand the actual like almost infection vector that we were completely blind to. Finding these employees after the fact is a lot more difficult than finding them during the application process. So there's a lot more like things you can trigger on during the application process, like where they applied from, how many times did they apply, and the platforms like Synapse really kind of helped us in terms of like correlating across the overlapping like meta attributes of these applicants.
Yep.
So you see the same IP do 50 applications within like 20 seconds. Or the same email being used for multiple applicant persona names. Like little overlaps like that are like flaws in their automated application process, but allow us to go and do that pivoting and the alerting. But yeah, the big thing, getting that data to us so we can do analysis on it, overlapping with our normal traditional CTI, because some of this does overlap with that context that you get from CTI, like these IPs that they're applying from are this this proxy service that
Right.
is flagged, or
Turns out there's still network infrastructure handling all of
yeah,
this traffic, right?
yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely,
using that as the starting point for characterization. But
yeah,
ultimately then it also ends up kind of crossing over into other disciplines where you're using the same analytical model, pivoting constructs and clustering ideas, but over totally other things, right?
yeah,
Resume contents, experience bullet points. I've
yeah,
even heard of organizations, and I can't remember if this was SentinelOne in particular, but organizations finding that applicants who had gotten through at least part of the process were then asked to provide bank account information, which
mm,
is where they would be paid.
yeah,
And that correlating those details actually led people to finding threat actors that had already successfully gained access to an organization
yeah.
via, the fact that they shared a bank account.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's one characteristic as well. Like each stage of the process, there's context that's not like directly threat related, but it's like meta context to the whole situation. That is key to getting that data and storing it and correlating on it. Even things that are more like vibes based context as well. And this is where it really kind of goes back into the things we collect also need to return data back and context back to the people that collect it for us. So our
Yep.
talent acquisition team needs to have our analytical context to be able to make an assessment on their own. Because from like an recruiting and HR perspective, they're doing they're naturally doing like so much filtering before it even gets to you. So if you have like little keys in there being like, hey, this person graduated this year and this thing didn't exist yet, or the school didn't exist yet, or this tool was referenced in use for 15 years, but it's 6 months old tool or technology. Context like that, that's kind of like the conversational details that kind of come out is great. And having your recruiting team be able to add that context to their data as well for that to feed in your platform, huge details as well. Even things like, yeah, they always had excuses for when they can never turn their camera on.
Right.
Things like that were like really good indicators just to find like trends of suspiciousness that stack to make just a general suspicious character.
And in a lot of instances, these methods are fairly similar to a lot of the backstop analysis or legend analysis that would go on in the intelligence community when you're vetting a source or when you're vetting an asset, right? And
Yeah.
so, like the need to correlate those things and make sure that anything that you can check, you do, so that if they are lying to you, it at least becomes apparent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
Yeah,
think the beauty,
the tools used before they existed thing
yeah,
is pretty classic.
yeah,
I've
exactly.
I've seen that also in non-threat actor resumes, just people claiming more experience than,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the tricky part of it is it requires a bit of an art and of like the real world because people do lie that aren't like malicious,
right.
especially during the hiring process. But the beautiful thing
Stretch.
is exactly, exactly. Now with AI, it's like the whole game has just changed dramatically in like how you vet these things because it's even easier to automate fake it all. Um, but the beauty of I think all of this is it stretches into multiple user bases that don't typically rely on threat intelligence. Like, our recruiting data comes to us. We go to the SOC with it. They have that to be able to hunt internally, proactively, and then it goes to like the sales team. So the sales team can use it for like the know your customer life cycle and vetting people that are trying to demo the product. That's where you get like we're catching like ransomware actors that are trying to demo the product, pretending to spoof another organization because that domain was like a play on words kind of thing to a real organization that
Well, it
wants to
turns
be.
out they need to test their tools too, right? So
Exactly. Yeah. So the
that
context of it
professional, like,
all.
call back to that professionalization, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So, Tom, like the research emphasized the cross-functional collaboration, which, we at Vertex believe is critical for defense. But, you mentioned the research was released about a year ago. Have you observed more of that cross collaboration since the release of it? Or what have you seen?
I think the default is for intelligence to unfortunately like remain isolated in its own little bubble right now. And that's where like the industry I feel is failing a lot. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's kind of unfortunate because the success is like so obvious when you kind of stretch out and be like, our little secret threat intel over here, our IOCs that we just love to hide from everyone in our company, that would actually be a lot more useful if you opened it up to the company and had
Yeah.
proper controls around it, obviously, but like fully implement that context around like every business model. Because I would say like that opened our eyes to intelligence overall becoming it's just like the way I look at it is like it's a support organization for the entire business from like business
Yep.
decisions, investments, sales, recruiting. Don't look at it as like CTI, it's intelligence for your organization. And cyber is like a core component to it, obviously. But I think a lot of organizations are still kind of holding it like, these are our IOCs. We can't use them. And you
I,
said,
I I think one of the most tragic aspects of that is that a lot of these organizations, the teams that are doing that, end up like overly specific, like end up overly focusing their analysis and not being able to affect the changes that they really should or would be able to have within the organization if they were to just broaden their perspective, right? And
yeah,
so, in a lot of instances, those teams are having trouble with their value proposition to the rest of the business, right? Like they
mm,
cost too much and don't have enough of an impact. They don't have enough of an effect. And if
yeah,
they were to just broaden the scope, like with greater scope comes greater impact. It's that simple.
sure.
And so many organizations are still failing that test. So it's definitely good to see orgs like yours that are, kind of on that, like lean in and decide to scoop up that use case too and this use case too. So
Yeah, yeah.
we're definitely seeing a few kind of industries get a little bit wiser to it, but it seems like it's a thing that's still pretty slow moving.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. People are
and for
definitely
like shocking level of benefit.
yeah, exactly. It's like, oh my God, this immediately justifies all these expensive things that we have.
Yeah.
It's I would say it's like it's definitely like slowly turning and maturing, but I think like the HR aspect for like people that are looking to do this, like that HR one is like such a clean way to approach this because they get it. They can see the benefits like really quickly when you filter out like a bunch of noise for them. It makes their whole business more efficient, saves them a lot of effort because they're just as scared as like accidentally hiring a malicious insider. That's a concern that they're all worried about and they're all trained on. So they're a great like champion to push threat intelligence to become more intelligence for your whole org. And then you just stretch from there. It's about really finding that mutual benefit because you can't just
Yep.
be like, here's a bunch of context and like
Hey, we're
raw
gonna come
data.
fix your yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, here's a bunch of raw IOCs for your email. It's like, good luck. And here's some like
Yeah.
giant report. No, it's not how it works. You need to like streamline into their workflow
Yeah.
and get that context to them so you can make them faster and more efficient or faster and more impactful to their own job rather than trying to make them security analysts, you know?
Right.
Well, I guess like my follow up question to that would be, how do you persuade another department of that benefit before a threat has occurred? So, like, does that make sense? Like, before something bad has happened, like, how do you explain, like, this is beneficial to you as this other department, like before, like, how do you help them understand?
Yeah, I for us the thing that worked really well is finding that real world example of something that they truly care about and kind of look to then automate it. So for us it was like, hey, we know people have applied to our company webpage. These are the list of emails that they applied for. Like, if you guys see any, let us know. We're happy to help and like let them go do their thing. And then you start to build that internal trust of like, oh, okay, these guys know what they're doing. Like, oh my gosh, we found one. Eventually, hopefully you find somebody that is excited to champion this in that organization. And then you
Yeah.
slowly turn the belt to like automate the whole thing. And then all of a sudden you have C-level people coordinating this all to make sure it's working and so forth. And then the problem is like, who wants to split the budget and buying all of our expensive tools so
Right.
we can continue this and so forth. But that's like
Yeah,
the really the way to go.
there's also definitely an aspect of it that the like you mentioned, the whole getting a champion, right? Like getting inside or even having it be sort of like a person to person sort of like, lateral like agreement across to just like, hey, let's take a look at this together
Yeah.
and make it a gradual, more organic thing. Because basically then by the time you're asking for formal permission, you've already got something that you can show that's sort of
Yeah.
a win, right?
Yeah.
So there's also like myriad organizations out there that have already failed to do some of these things, and so there's a certain amount of like, they're like, you don't want to become like them, do you? Right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you can do, you
Yeah.
know,
I think the IT workers one's a great example because it's so it was at that time it was in the news like nonstop. So like every executive was like freaking out about this stuff. So perfect way to kind of interject like off of that media hype a little bit to then try and get it going. But yeah, finding those wins, finding that little like, oh my gosh, we found something useful and expand on it. But I would say as like CTI analysts and researchers, like go look for people looking for your applicant or for your organization's job website and applying. Like this data isn't only isolated to your applicant collection or like tool set and so forth that your HR owns. There's tons of databases out there that are floating around across the community research communities that are showing all the jobs they've applied for, things like that. So there's a great way to get started with like open source intelligence and apply that to your organization and then start to hone out the things that only you have insight into.
yeah, it's also a good way to sort of push from both directions. One of the things that we sort of take as a an analytical best practice is when you're trying to determine if two things are linked. If you think about it sort of from a graph perspective, right? Like spiraling out from each of those things to see if they touch is
Mhm.
way more efficient than spiraling all the way out from one to attempt to find the other, right? If you think
Yeah.
about it in sort of surface area, sort of just as a guideline. And so basically by pushing from both directions, by starting from OSINT and starting from, are there threat actors talking about applying to our organization, and then also correlating that with the internal data takes that both prongs approach, which is definitely effective.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with something that's so high scale, like the IT workers, like you're very likely to find that cross overlap. It's there's the quantity alone is makes that pretty
Yeah, if
like
you're a big org, like the chances of you not encountering this are basically zero.
yeah. If you can't find one, it's almost like you're doing it wrong. So
Yeah. Like the Vertex project is still super small, so we probably haven't encountered that yet, but like that's
I
about it,
don't know.
right?
I don't know. We'll see because
Yeah, yeah.
they applied for one of our roles, and in the resume it said they've been using Vertex or Synapse for I think it was like 15 years or something. We're like, "Mm." That
Love
was a
it.
little suspicious. Yeah.
I love that they're touting that. Like we've been using it for 15 years. Like,
Yeah. I was like, wow, we should hire you. You guys probably know what you're doing.
yeah.
Do you think like they could just be like, I just fat fingered it. I didn't mean it 15 years.
5. I meant
I
5.
meant
Yeah.
5.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, now we have to watch out because we've been saying it's 10 years, and now like if it's going to be like widely out.
Yeah.
Got
Yeah,
nothing.
we're still only I think what like 15, 16 people, so we have a pretty different hiring process,
Yeah.
but it's so valuable to any organization of significant size, right?
Yeah.
That like
Oh, for sure.
and as just one example of broadening the discipline too, right? Like that's the other takeaway here is like this is just one avenue among many to broaden the discipline and have higher impact.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The really tricky part is, with the whole industry maturing, I think one big piece of this has been access to telemetry that allows you to do research has become something you just write a check for. In the past, it was
Yeah.
just something that didn't exist. So yeah, being able to just kind of get access to the right data to dive into these things has become a lot more reasonable.
Yeah, it's gone from like back rooms filled with like smoky cigar smoke and like,
Yeah.
dark wood and like details being hammered out of like a deal to
Yeah,
like you can just buy it
exactly.
now.
So there's no excuse not to go at it.
So, Tom, like talking about sharing budget and platforms, I wanted to ask, like, what do you see is from a platform perspective, like what enables collaboration and connecting signals across teams? Like, what's important from a platform perspective to you?
Yeah, I think the ability, most important thing of it all is the ability to customize it to our own telemetry and intake and push out. The customization of the platform is key. We have to be able to create custom ingestion tools, be able to create automated capabilities that go and push our context outwards. If we aren't able to push our context from all of our analysis on Synapse out to our recruiting platforms, the recruiters aren't going to go log into Synapse. So they need
Right.
that context that we can provide. So that
Just like
ability,
any other analyst, they need another tab open like they need a hole in their head, right? Like
yeah, I know the idea of like getting them in Synapse would make me kind of cry, I think. But that ability for us to like master Synapse and be able to push that context as like a master capability, push that context out to where people see it in their own workflows is absolutely critical. But across all of this, like on the actual platform itself, the ability for speed and pivoting is key across all of our data. Like I think about the customization of like like learning like a storm query to be able to do some crazy pivots that would be almost difficult to articulate without a storm query in my mind. Being able to do that on a platform is key because that's how you find like the really juicy nuggets that you didn't really know were even possible to connect yet.
Yep.
Especially when you're dealing with like all this different types of data, like recruiting data, sales data, whatever. It's a custom storm type system is is almost essential in many ways. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck using some weird UI that is built around known ways of pivoting while the actors are always trying to make those more difficult to use. Um, but yeah, I think that's kind of the core of it. The usability across all these different organizations within a single platform is kind of like the shining star of like, when before I had my hands on Synapse back in the day, it was like everyone in our industry was trying to create their own tip. And everybody goes and tries to buy it, and then it's like, oh, I'm just gonna make it. This makes sense to me. Then you make it, and you're like, wow, this is actually awful. I think we've all
This
gone
is
through that
actually a hard problem. Yeah.
we've all gone through that process as
Yeah.
analysts, I think. But the ability for it to be something that works for so many different types of use cases is key. We look at it as like the threat aspect, but like having sales guys go in there or like the SOC or IT guys go in there for like IT type use case across all this data is also like huge. So you're not just making like a security tool, you're making like an analytical decision platform that allow so many types of use cases across it. That's almost like a creativity issue rather than like a capability issue. Like, how can we
Yeah.
use it? Because it's so powerful.
Yep. Yeah, and so like one of the things that we have found is there's definitely like a learning curve where some of those other teams are doing intelligence work and just sort of don't have the background or the training to realize that they're
Mhm.
doing intelligence work. And so we have been trying to sort of focus on like how can we make UI components that are a little bit more approachable for some
Yeah.
of those like task specific use cases and stuff like that. But definitely like the fusion aspect, right? The interaction of your team's analysis with that team's internal state and that team's
Yeah.
analysis is so critical to like making any sort of interdisciplinary analytical workflow happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to customize the whole platform for their own analytical use case is um is really a powerful thing. If it's just like dashboards or just like pre-made queries and things like that type of stuff it's important because all of a sudden you then justify the existence of this tool to teams that would never have even thought about using it in the past. So, and again, it intertwines with everybody's workflows, and eventually, somebody in all these organizations will be like, "This is amazing," and find their own use case, and they become like a champion for actually using the product at like a hardcore level.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, that's where I see Synapse. But like platforms overall, like the speed and like privacy of it all and customization of it all is key. And this also includes
Yeah.
kind of like being able to evolve as the company evolves as well. New data, new acquisition, like you do an acquisition of company and be able to get their data in really quickly
Yep.
and all that stuff. It's
I
all
mean,
great.
one of the things that we talk about pretty regularly is research is essentially the art of failing until you don't, right?
Mm.
And it's the art of asking bad questions until you happen upon a good one.
Yeah.
And so basically being able to ask that bad question and have the result be quickly determined to be not interesting is
Yeah.
just as important as the ability to like pull one of those amazingly good questions out of the ether. And so I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head with the fact that like analysts need to be able to iterate more quickly. And
Mhm.
so like having it be that like they have an idea for a question that they should be able to ask of their data, and having that be something that they need to go like ask a dev to implement a button to do or something like that is just so counterintuitive to me as like the exploration and iterative process of doing analysis is actually the thing that we're trying to facilitate, right? And so
Yeah.
click and show adjacencies and ask those terrible questions because every now and again you'll hit on an amazing question.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's getting more foggy with like all these like tips and like analytical platforms are popping up with made through like vibe coding because I think people are quickly forgetting that like tooling enables the analyst. It doesn't replace their judgment. And
Right.
if you try and create something that replaces their judgment, you're going to fail because that is just like almost an art more than a science in many cases. You
100%.
have to be able to experiment so much.
Well, I think didn't you guys relatively recently publish a paper on using LLMs to try to do actual analysis and finding that like the metrics are just terrible,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, in as much as it's pretty good at code and things like that now,
Mhm.
right? We've even been adopting it internally.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where people don't realize how much of a reduced state space code is versus, the known universe and analytical
Yeah.
relevance and even natural language, right? So,
Yeah.
people have asked fairly regularly, well, how am I going to make a natural language to storm converter? And I'm like, well, if you decide to come up with a sufficiently precise subset of natural language, then you're almost to storm anyway, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like natural language is ambiguous. And so like there's just too much room for interpretation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've done a lot of work on like the AI research side in terms of just trying to add context to things. Something as simple as like OSINT. You think of like, oh, just keep up with all the blogs and add context, and that is it's a challenge. It's very difficult. Yeah, the moving away from the code space into intelligence work is so tricky, and that gets into the whole art of how do you tag and model your data in Synapse, like this is true versus this is what somebody says is true AI doesn't know the difference between what's said is true versus is true. So it
Yep.
gets gets messy if you try and automate all that.
Yeah, and it gets really meta because basically the amount of context that you need in place to continue percolating an assessment is all about the origin and
Mm,
your faith, your confidence in those
yeah,
origins, and how much do they correlate, how much do they disagree,
yeah.
right? And that's all stuff that the LLMs aren't particularly great at yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I give shout outs to like our intelligence engineering folks, Aaron Stevens over on our team, and
Yeah.
him just like throwing things at him of like, how do I think about how this cluster has formed from this seed and stuff like that. It's I love working with that guy. He comes from the the old Mandiant crew that has
Yeah.
nailed it with what you were used to work on, and just getting your head wrapped around how you even approach that is something to it's such like it needs a book written on it. Vizzy, go write the book on it, would you? All right.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and
But
it's one of those things too that like it needs to happen iteratively because
yeah,
you will essentially codify things incorrectly and then need to back that out and readjust. And I mean
yeah,
it's exactly what you mentioned, right? The dynamism of the space is such that you can never just set an algorithm and be like, okay, we're done, right?
yeah,
Like it's never done.
exactly, exactly.
Awesome. Wow. I really appreciate you being with us here today, Tom. Is there anything recent that you've researched that you'd like to plug here? And where can people find you?
Yeah, so you guys can find me on LinkedIn. It's pretty much the place I'm unfortunately most active nowadays. But yeah, find me there. You can follow me. I'm on X and Blue Sky as well. But yeah, no, there's nothing I want to give a shout out on terms of like recent research. I would say check out the Sentinel Labs website. We've done a lot of recent work on just trying to articulate the problems and challenges with like AI and threat intelligence and research overall. That includes like adding context to OSINT, and Phil from our team just did some work on trying to use it for almost automating some aspects of like reverse engineering malware. So
It's
a
actually
whole new
shockingly good at some of that stuff.
yeah, it's surprising seeing him work through it has been amazingly educational and eye-opening in terms of like, wow, this isn't that great, but it's also like really kind of crazy how far we've come. But yeah, check out that. The team's been doing amazing work and posting it there. So I would definitely recommend checking out if you're curious on any of this stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you, Vizzy, for being here today. I'm like patting myself on the back for being like, I need to get Tom and Vizzy to talk to each other.
Right?
Yeah,
It
thanks
makes
for having
Awesome.
me, guys. I
makes
appreciate it.
very good conversation. So
I always love to come and hang out.
yeah, for sure. So I hope everybody enjoyed this episode, and we hope you stay tuned for the next episode of our 10 episode series. We'll be talking with the analyst again at the Vertex Project. Thanks so much for listening, everybody, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Woohoo!
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Signals and Stories. If you found this episode useful, be sure to follow the series and share it with your team. For more on how the Vertex Project approaches intelligence, from data modeling to real investigations, visit vertex.link. We'll see you in the next episode.